It's time!
What's kicking, everybody? We are back for another episode of Pickin Fights. I'm Keith, joined as always by Tom. Tom, how are you tonight, brother?
I'm doing great. I think the only person hotter than me in sports betting, especially for UFC, is you, Keith. We had a phenomenal week at UFC 272. I think we picked almost everything right. I think there was only one incorrect pick on maybe, I know on my side, you might have even gotten them all right. But I mean, after going through and, basically diagnosing what was going to happen, feeling really good and hoping we can come back with some more picks for the people today. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent as well. I appreciate the compliment. I would actually say that you're better than me at sports betting. I actually got a DM from someone who, I guess he's one of our supporters out there. It's one of these kind people on the internet that I've never actually met before. Shout out Enfuego. This dude has always let me know what he thinks of the episodes and everything. And last week, instead of being like, yo, you had a great week, he actually told me your co-host had a great week. So, that was a big up for you right there from Enfuego. But I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, I did have one incorrect pick, actually, and that was in my very first pick, unfortunately. But it is what it is. We live to fight another week, and I didn't even have to say that because I still had a great week regardless. So we've got a stacked card this week. It's actually one of my favorite fight night cards of the year so far, possibly my favorite, and it's the one headlined by Thiago Santos and Magomed Ankalaev. Big fan of this one. So we're going to start, as we always do, by our prelim locks, and I'll kick it off with my one and only this week. I've got Miranda Maverick by decision, and I just think what it really comes down to here is she's got a major grappling advantage in this one. And what's her face, Sabina Mazo, right? Correct? Yes, Sabina Mazo. She has a major striking advantage in this one, but we say this time and time again in these women's fights that damage and striking isn't really valued as high if there's someone in the fight that is controlling the fight using grappling, ground control time. And that's one big thing that it's going to come down to for Miranda Maverick here. And Sabina Mazo in the past has been held down for 3 rounds straight, basically. Now, I believe that was by Alexis Davis, but, I think that this fight is actually going to look pretty similar to this past week's main event between Colby Covington and George Masvidal, because Miranda Maverick just has the wrestling prowess to really take advantage of Mazo's weakness and win by decision. I think it's going to be a 30-27 decision, unanimous decision across the board. Can't wait to see what those odds look like as the fight gets closer. What are your prelim locks for us, Tom?
Yeah, I have Matthew Semmelsberger beating AJ Fletcher. And reason being, this is AJ Fletcher's first fight in the UFC after taking a noticeable step up from competition after fighting Leonardo Damiani. Granted, it was a TKO with a flying knee on the Contender Series. 5 months later, he's going against the guy Semi the Jedi, I guess he called himself, Matthew Semmelsberger. Last few fights, he is 4-1 in his last 5. Martin Sando 4-2-1. He knocked him out with a TKO and a right cross 4 months ago. And I just think we've seen only one bad performance from Semmelsberger, and that was against, Chaos Williams, who's a guy who's solidified himself in the UFC as maybe not totally solidified himself yet, but, Chaos Williams is someone that people have on their radars, and he's somebody who is moving up in the division. And I think Matthew Semmelsberger, loss to him at this point in his career isn't something that you would consider quite a knock. Also, being from Frederick, Maryland, not me, Semmelsberger is, but, I'm in Virginia now, but, always have a place in my heart for Maryland and a guy who is an aggressive and really good established Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist in the MMA community. I just think there's a lot of things that are leaning towards Semmelsberger in this fight. And then looking at Tapology, 79% of the people on Tapology are going with Matthew Semmelsberger, with 70% of the people who are picking him by TKO. So I'm going to follow the good people at Tapology. I really just think that this is going to be a noticeable step up in competition for AJ Fletcher. He's a guy who, he is 9-0, but the guys he's facing, when you look back at the competition, his first, a year and a half ago, he's fighting a guy who's 10-9, 6-3, 9-17, 3-4. Those are his. And then finally on the Contender Series, he fought someone who was 10-2. But before that, you look at the combined records of the people that he has fought, and it's just really, really not good. And I always question that. And you probably have heard me see, and if you watch our show enough, you always hear me question guys when they have questionable competition with shoddy records. They do that in boxing for a reason. They want you to get your feet wet before giving you, a little bit of a step up incrementally. But I think Matthew Semmelsberger is too big of a jump at this point. I think AJ Fletcher is probably going to be a little bit shocked with getting into the UFC. And this fight is actually pretty high up. I think it's actually the main event of the prelims. So I think it's going to be a big spot for AJ Fletcher. More power to him if he can come out victorious here. But I think Matthew Semmelsberger is going to be a little bit too experienced in the UFC. A little bit more progressed in his career. He's 29 years old. He's entering his prime. He's going to be 6'1" against the 5'10" Fletcher, and he's going to hold an 8-inch reach advantage. So for all of those reasons, especially in jiu-jitsu, when you have long arms, you can really, force your will on your opponent. And I think Matthew Semmelsberger is going to dictate where this fight takes place. And I'm going with Semmelsberger over AJ Fletcher as my prelim lock.
I like that pick a lot. Do you have any other prelim locks for us? So that's the only one.
That's the one I was looking at the most, this fight, or this card, rather. We say it's a really good card, a stacked card, and a lot of the reasons why we say that is because it has a lot of competitive fights against some guys that maybe not be known, not too known to a casual fan here, which is, why on the prelim locks we say, hey, we do just the locks. We don't want to go through the entire prelims, or I talk a lot, you talk a lot. We'll have a 2-hour-long show, and I don't want to do that to the people. So right now I'm just going with Matthew Semmelsberger as the betting lock. Otherwise, if you got nothing to do Saturday, sit down, grab a soda, grab a beverage, grab whatever you want, and watch the fights, because there's going to be a lot of good ones.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I like that we both just have one prelim lock that we really, really like for this week. I do want to say, though, because you brought up, there's some fighters on this card that maybe you don't know sometimes on fight nights, but there is one guy in particular that is the second prelim fight on this card that I don't think many people are going to forget, but he may go unnoticed because of how early he is on the prelims. And that's actually Chris Moutino. He's fighting Guido Canetti. I just think that that's going to be something to watch because, Chris Moutino, he did receive a $75,000 bonus for fight of the night when he fought Sean O'Malley on super short notice. It looks like he's actually making a career in the UFC. Some people thought that it would be some sort of one and done deal, just brought in. And I mean, we'll see what happens now. Guido Canetti is, decent competition. And I'm excited to see what Chris Moutino can do. Maybe he'll get back on people's radars after this week. But with that being said, we're going to jump into the main card. And this opener on the main card is actually a fight that I'm super excited for. We've got Bruno Silva versus Alex Pereira. And, listen, that everybody knows who Alex Pereira is. He's got like this massive target on his back at this point because he knocked out Israel Adesanya back in 2017 when they were kickboxing. So, that's just everybody knows Pereira at this point. But there's a few bets that I really like in this fight. And I like this fight to not go the distance because these are two guys that can stand and bang. Bruno Silva has some really good, really powerful hands. And obviously Alex Pereira, if he can knock out Izzy, then he's got something going there for him too. Obviously a young Izzy, but and another thing for Alex Pereira in this one that I really like. By the way, I'm going with Alex Pereira because he has a pretty sizable reach advantage in this one, and that really works for him with his style of kickboxing, more of a Muay Thai style. And in order to defeat that reach, Bruno Silva is going to have to be more aggressive than normal, and Pereira is just going to be able to maintain distance and just pick Bruno Silva apart. And I really don't see Bruno Silva landing that many shots throughout this one. So I'm going with Alex Pereira, and I'm going with him by knockout in this one. So what do you think about that, Tom?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, we've seen sometimes where Bruno Silva can end up on the ground and do ground and pound, but that's really not his bread and butter. His bread and butter is on the feet. He has, zero takedowns or zero takedown attempts inside the UFC, zero submission averages. So it's not like this guy is going to be any threat to Alex Pereira on the ground. And that's where Alex Pereira is really going to face his most aggressive competition, because we know that nobody is going to really, outside of really Izzy, and the people maybe the top 3 or 4 in the division, no one's going to stand with him and provide him that much competition. So at the end of the day, it's really going to be, can Alex Pereira get to Izzy without getting through or passing through, a Marvin Vettori or somebody who's going to, wrestle and be like that. And Bruno Silva's just not that guy. I think he's going to run right through him. And unfortunately for Bruno Silva, yeah, I think it's going to be Alex Pereira. I think Alex Pereira is probably going to finish it. I would go with I don't know what the over under is on the rounds. I would say it's probably maybe 1.5 rounds. So yeah, but I like Alex Pereira in the first or the second. I don't know if this will reach even the third round.
Yeah, I don't see it reaching the third either. And one important thing to take notice of is like Vegas is still a little bit weary on Alex Pereira, right? Like Bruno Silva is plus 140 in this one, just a slight underdog. And Pereira is minus 165, only a slight favorite. So I'm really excited to see what the Alex Pereira by knockout lines look like as we hit like the Thursday, Friday, Saturday mark. So now we're going to move on up to the next fight, and I'm very, very nervous about this. Well, not nervous. I'm torn about this one, but I actually am a fan of both of these guys, so I am a little bit nervous about it. This is one of the ones that you mentioned that's a really hard one to pick because we've got Drew Dober, and he's actually coming in at minus 225 despite being on a 2-fight losing streak right now and a little bit inactive against Terence McKinney, who is, I mean, he looks hot as anybody right now, but he's also not fighting the same level of competition that Drew Dober has been over his past couple of fights. Like Drew Dober was in the absolute war with Brad Riddell. That he took a lot of damage in, but ultimately he was out grappled by Brad Riddell, who's not really known to be a big time grappler. He's really a stand and bang type of guy. So I think just because of his activity, more than anything, I might be rolling with Terence McKinney here. I'm having a tough time with this one. This is a really tough fight to pick. It's like more of a gut feeling to go with Terence McKinney here. Plus, that underdog line at plus 170 is pretty enticing too. So maybe sprinkle a little bit on him. He won't be going in any parlays just because this fight could go either way. But I am feeling Terence McKinney. He would have to do it by finish. I mean, keep that finish streak going. I'm going with Terrance. Nothing else to say there.
Yeah, this is a really tough one because what is Terence McKinney's main method of victory? That's the knockout, right? I mean, he just beat Faraz Siam by rear naked choke, but that was after a really good performance on the feet. Drew Dober has probably the biggest chin on anyone who's not named Shaquille O'Neal. And we've never seen Drew Dober. I mean, he had that war with Brad Riddell. There were points where he had gotten, touched, but he was never close to going out. I don't know if that dome can go out. There's so much padding. So I'm really nervous for Terence McKinney here because, not that that's his only method of victory is by knocking a guy out. But I mean, when your strength is stand up and this guy is got what, can really be the stand-up killer and a great chin. And let's not undersell what Drew Dober can do on the feet. I mean, he's got wins over Matt Frivola. I'm looking at Terence McKinney's record. But Drew Dober has wins over plenty guys. I mean, his only 2 losses are against Islam Makhachev, which, everyone has a loss to Islam Makhachev. And then Brad Riddell, in unanimous decision, Brad Riddell is 9-1.
And
he's got wins. Go ahead.
He has a loss to Beneil Dariush.
Yeah, and he has even just a loss to Beneil Dariush. This guy only loses to people who are going to be top competition. He has wins over Nasrat Haqparast too and Alexander Hernandez. So, I mean, listen, Drew Dober is legit, and I'm going to get him confused with Brad Riddell. I don't know why, but Drew Dober is the truth. Terence McKinney is also the truth. I think this is a great clash of guys here. If I'm going to bet, I think I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on Terence McKinney. But I don't feel confident enough to bet on Drew Dober at minus 225. But I think Drew Dober might actually take this one. Looking at Tapology, that's not the most popular pick. 64% are taking McKinney. That's just over 1,000 people. 64% of them, that's pretty well evenly split between KO, decision, and submission. I mean, that tells you just how good and how high people are on Terence McKinney and his ability inside of the octagon. But, I mean, I think Drew Dober is gonna edge this one out. I think he's a really well-rounded fighter, and I actually think this one ends up going the distance here. And I think Drew Dober wins the decision. But if Terence McKinney wins this one, it's just gonna continue to rocket him up the rankings.
I definitely agree, and this might be like when it's all said and done, a sneaky potential fight of the year so far because these two guys they know how to put on a show. So next up, we're gonna move up to Khalil Rountree versus Karl Roberson. And this is another one that's actually really tough to pick in my opinion. These are tight lines in this one. Let's see. I'm pulling up the gambling odds. We've got -125 in favor of Khalil Rountree and +105 for Karl Roberson. Like, those are probably some of the tightest lines on this card. But I'm leaning towards Khalil Rountree just because of the power and the striking ability that he possesses more than anything. Like, if you watch Khalil Rountree fights in the past, he's really good in the striking realm. There's not much else that I have to say than that, except that he was a pretty decent guest on the Joe Rogan podcast. So, that also is going to make me a little bit more biased towards him too. But I'm rolling with Khalil Rountree here. Now, before we started filming, you had some really good logic, so I'm going to pass over to you now, Tom.
Yeah, so Karl Roberson, man, I mean, he traditionally fights at 85. This will be his first fight at 205 light heavyweight, and that's obviously a weight that Khalil Rountree has been at for some time now. When you look at Karl Roberson's last few fights, especially his most recent losses, guys against Brendan Allen, which is a heel hook. Brendan Allen, we know is a guy who's known to have a really aggressive ground game, but he's also a sizable guy for the division. And then we also look at Marvin Vettori, a guy who can and has wrestled 205 against Paulo Costa when he just refused to make the 85-pound limit. When Karl Roberson is losing, he's losing to guys who are more technical and are bigger than him. Now he's moving up to a weight where everybody's probably bigger than him. I don't like that combination of features moving into this fight here. You're at 85, you're losing to guys on the ground who are bigger than you, and now you're moving up to a higher weight class against the guy who you're not going to be able to get to the ground if you want to use that. Not that really Karl Roberson is going to use the ground at all. I think this is going to be a standing battle, and when you're moving up a weight class against a guy that has put out power like Khalil Rountree, he's named the Warhorse for a reason. Now, some people, they have nicknames just, for no particular reason. They get them and they're fluffy, or maybe they're ironic. The Warhorse is fitting for Khalil Rountree. He goes in there and he can destroy people. And I'm really nervous that's what he's going to do to Karl Roberson here in his first fight at 205. Looking at Tapology, over 1,100 votes are coming in, 76% on Khalil Rountree. 69% of those people by TKO. Nice. So I think I'm going to go with, at this point in the week, it's -125 for Khalil Rountree. I think that's a pretty favorable line for him, considering his power, considering that Karl Roberson is going to want to stand and fight with him, and considering that he's going to be the much larger fighter coming into this fight. He's going to be used to the weight. It may be, the longer it goes, I think it may swing a little bit towards Karl Roberson. Just because he will be maybe a little bit smaller, and that helps his cardio. But I just think overall, we've seen it time in and time again when guys move up in weight class, that just, getting the feel for the body is just a little bit different in how it moves. Now, Karl Roberson has had 9 months since his last loss to prepare for this move up. So, that is definitely on his side. But I think the litany of everything else, I mean, these guys otherwise, are going to be the same height, the same reach. There's no advantage there. So Karl Roberson may have a slight speed advantage, but I still like Khalil Rountree with his comfortability at the weight, with his devastating power. And so, yeah, I'm going to go with Khalil Rountree here.
Yeah, I like that we're, in agreement for that one, especially over Khalil Rountree's power. I think that's definitely the thing that stands out to me the most here. So next up, we're going to move up to Alex Caceres, with one of my favorite nicknames of all time, Bruce Leroy, versus Siddique Yusuf. And I'm rolling with Siddique Yusuf here. I just think he's a really good, well-rounded fighter, and he's also really good against well-rounded fighters. He has some great defensive grappling. He, especially in that fight against, I think it was Andre Touchy-Feely, I like that performance a lot from Siddique Yusuf. And I like his strategy when he's standing and striking with guys, where he really works his way up his opponents. Like, he starts down at their legs very early and just chops away at the legs, chop, chop, chop. And then he works his way up to their body. And then he doesn't really attack the head that often until a little bit later in the first round. And then he really goes after their head in the second round after he's pieced up the lower parts of them. So I really like Siddique Yusuf's strategy when he's striking. It's almost like a chess match for him. And he does go in with a similar attack a lot of the times. But, when he's grappling, he never gives up his back. He's really intelligent in a lot of realms of MMA. And, I think that he'll probably win by decision just because of the intelligent game plan and how composed and patient that he can be. in the octagon with guys. So I'm rolling with Yusuff here. He is minus 230 over Alex Caceres is plus 190 line. So I like the Siddique Yusuff pick.
Yeah, I'm also going with Sadiq Yusuff. He's the guy who's fighting out of New Carrollton, Maryland. So that's, like I said, staying with that whole, Maryland and close to home attitude. But also just more than that, Sadiq Yusuff is a very technical fighter, like you were saying. He's very defensive. You don't find him in really bad positions. And that's something that you need when you're fighting a guy who's wild and crazy like Bruce Leroy Caceres. So, we've seen Alex Caceres win. He's 5 of his last 5. But the level of competition isn't quite there for Bruce Leroy at this point. It's gotten better as of late. He's 5 fights ago. Steven Peterson 17-8. He's got a win over Chase Hooper, unanimous decision. And we've talked a lot about Chase Hooper. We like Chase Hooper. He's young in the UFC, but especially a year and 8 months ago, if you want to be a top guy in the division, I need you to finish Chase Hooper. I can't have you go into decisions with him. Submission, rear naked choke by Austin Springer, 11-3. That was actually a pretty good fight 2 months following that Chase Hooper fight. And then Kevin Kroom did a unanimous decision. And then he submitted Sung Woo Choi, which actually was very surprising in a fight that I think both of us were picking Sung Woo Choi to win. So he showed some good wherewithal there. He showed that he could take a punch and he can get creative with going on the ground. But I think with Sadiq Yusuff, I think once Yusuff touches Bruce Leroy, if he does, I think, he's going to be patient. He's not going to find himself in bad positions. And like you said, he's got very good defensive grappling to where if they get into an altercation on the ground, I trust Sadiq Yusuff to, hold his own. And if things get too hairy, to disengage. So I think Sadiq Yusuff, like you said, he's very technical. He's very defensive. You don't find him in bad positions. For all those reasons, I'm going to take Sadiq Yusuff over Alex, Bruce Leroy Caceres. And I like your decision on it, going to the decision and having the judges decide this one.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very excited to see that line as well for Yusuff by decision. So this is a fight that, it almost pains me to pick against the guy that I'm going to pick against here. And it is still tough to do so, right? But, look, we got to compare a few things between these two guys' track records first, right? Like Song Yadong versus Marlon Moraes. Song Yadong hasn't fought the level of competition that Marlon Moraes has, right? Like he's fought guys like, Chito Vera is probably one of the more notable wins that he has. He had a loss to Kyler Phillips, who was in full form that night. I mean, other than that, Julio Arce, Casey Kenny, his last 2 wins. And then you compare that to Marlon Moraes, who he's lost, I believe it's 4 of his last 5. But then you look at who those losses come to. The last one against Merab Davishvili, who was winning that, or Marlon Moraes was winning that fight. And Merab just had one of the best in-fight comebacks of all time and dominated Marlon Moraes, to end the fight in the late second round. Then you have Rob Font, Rob Font's on the rise. Corey Sandhagen, who just fought for the interim title against Peter Yan. He had a win just before that against Jose Aldo by decision. And then before that was a loss to Henry Cejudo, and so, that it's a little bit tough to compare these two guys' history, right? Like Marlon Moraes is definitely fighting the better competition. He's been up towards the top of the division for quite some time now, but his chin has become so weathered from that good competition that I can't really trust him in this fight. Marlon Moraes, weak chin. Song Yadong has a pretty good chin. And I'm taking Song Yadong in this one for that reason. Song Yadong has, really good striking that can compete with Marlon Moraes. And it's like he's almost waiting to break out, to start facing that top level competition in the bantamweight division, and I think that this is the fight where he gets it done and ultimately beats Marlon Moraes. I can't give you a method of victory in this one because, it depends on what kind of Marlon Moraes does come out. But the people at Tapology are really feeling him to win by knockout. 75% of the votes on Song Yadong coming in that way. And, that really goes with my point about him, Marlon Moraes having a weak chin going into this fight. It sucks because he has been up at the top for so long, but, Marlon Moraes is going to end up being a stepping stone for a lot of guys over his next few fights before he's possibly ultimately cut. So I'm going with Song Yadong in this one. I'm feeling the knockout, but he may just be, money line added to a parlay. What do you think about that one, Tom?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm just so nervous for Marlon Moraes and his ability to weather a storm and to take take a couple, hits on the chin and keep it moving. This is a guy who's been a part of a few wars. His most recent win is against Jose Aldo, and what I think a lot of people would argue is one of Jose Aldo's worst performances in recent history. And that's not even saying that it was a bad performance. It was a hard-nosed split decision win for Marlon Moraes. He's had a really, really tough go of it. I mean, again, you went through the litany of competition that he's fought, and it's all top guys in the division and in combat sports at the weight class. So, I mean, Rob Dvalishvili took him down 4 times. Rob Font was, Marlon Moraes took Rob Font down twice, but, Rob showed his ability to get up. I'm really nervous about, like you said, Marlon Moraes' ability to withstand punishment. And Song Yadong, like you said, has a really, really good chin. Neither one of these guys are against or have a really bad ground game, but they don't have a particularly strong one either. I think these are guys who are two sides of the same coin. I think maybe you could say that Marlon Moraes has a little bit more of a wrestling acumen, but at the end of the day, this is probably going to be a stand-up fight unless Marlon can take it down to the ground. I think Song Yadong is well-versed enough to handle himself, but ultimately, I think what we're going to see is what has been Marlon Moraes' downfall the last few fights, and that's going to be his inability to take one on the chin. And then Merab Dvalishvili fight, he had Merab hurt for, he had I cannot talk. He had Merab seriously hurt early on in that fight, and Merab didn't go out. I think we're going to see maybe a similar thing with Song Yadong. I think Marlon Moraes' power isn't what it used to be to put people away. So I'm going to follow your pick here. I'm going to go Song Yadong, but I'm going to really see where the line moves, because if Song Yadong becomes too much of a heavy favorite, I think there definitely is something to be said for putting, sprinkling some on Marlon Moraes. I think right now he's plus 195. If that gets into like the mid 2s, I'm definitely going to sprinkle some on Marlon Moraes, because he was and is a very solid fighter. He just has a bad chin. And I think that, whenever you have a really, really good fighter, seeing them lose 4 in a row, despite no matter the competition, is something that very rarely happens. You can get guys who are, if they are truly quality, they find their way out of bad skits. And I think Marlon Moraes has the ability to do that. I think he is a quality fighter. Like I said, it's not like he's losing to just anybody. So depending on the line, if that gets above like 225, 230, I'm going to sprinkle some on Marlon Moraes. But ultimately, the pick is going to be Song Yadong.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, actually. Maybe because, at plus 195 now for Moraes, that's still, a pretty good value underdog there. And he is a live dog. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like I really think Song Yadong is going to come out and dominate. It's just, like you said, he might catch one on the chin that just puts him out. So I really like that logic behind sprinkling a little bit on Marlon Moraes. That's really solid and really smart there. But, 2 things that I also really like about Song Yadong, because I am slowly becoming a fan of his. I do like his nickname a lot, Kung Fu Monkey. And I'm looking forward to seeing Uriah Faber in his corner, because Song Yadong does come out of Team Alpha Male. And it's a lot of fun seeing, old man Uriah Faber in people's corners telling him what to do. He was there last weekend in that Marina Rodriguez fight. Who's she fighting again? I've got bad short-term memory, but he was in the opponent of Marina Rodriguez's corner telling her what was up. So next up, we've got the main event.
Yan.
Yes, Yan Jianan. Yeah, it was cool seeing Uriah Faber out there. So next up, we've got the main event for this fight night card. And, it's at light heavyweight. I don't really know what the stakes are here, except potential ranking going forward, because it's not like this is really setting up a title shot for anybody. But we've got Thiago Santos versus Magomed Ankalaev. And, I mean, I'm rolling with Ankalaev here. I think it's a pretty no-brainer. He's coming in at minus 450, a very heavy favorite, and Santos is plus 350. And, the biggest thing that really stands out is Ankalaev's wrestling ability more than anything. That's really what it comes down to. And I see him completely just flowing like water all over the top of Thiago Santos for potentially 5 rounds, but also I could see him getting a ground and pound victory out of this one. So it's a bit tough to, pick a method of victory here. But, Ankalaev is 16-1. He's fought some of the, some solid competition in this light heavyweight division. I don't think that at this point, for Thiago Santos, he's really going to contend with a guy in Magomed Ankalaev. So pretty no brainer in my opinion. There's not much to say here, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, Magomed Ankalaev, I think, is going to do the Khabib effect. Not so much the Colby effect, but maybe the Bryce Mitchell effect. We could say now. Listen, Thiago Santos, he can stand and he can bang, but even at the end of the day, that's an aspect of his game that is being surpassed. He did that with Johnny Walker in a 5-round fight that was largely underwhelming. Each of those guys finishing with under 50 total strikes, so largely underwhelming. And then we see Johnny Walker go on and he lost, I think, 2 of his last 3 or 3 of his last 4. So not a great showing, not a great win that age for Thiago Santos. You combine that with the fact that he's 38, 39 years old. He has losses to Alexander Rakshik, Glover Teixeira, and John Jones before that in 2019. And John Jones in 2019 wasn't the best version of John Jones that we've ever seen. Slight appearance by chance here. At the end of the day, I think that Thiago Santos' best days are behind him, and his ultimate weakness is the ground. And when you have a 29-year-old Magomed Ankalaev hungry to be at the top of the 205 division, I think Magomed Ankalaev probably could have gotten a little bit better competition, but everybody was booked up or everyone had a fight, or Thiago Santos was the only one who said yes, and to him props. But I think ultimately this is going to go the way that we expect it to go. Magomed Ankalaev is going to just look for his opportunity to get Thiago Santos to the ground, and I think he's going to beat him up on the ground. And I don't think this one lasts further than the second round here.
Wow, I like that pick a lot. One thing I do want to say about Ankalaev, I was a little bit shocked to find out that he was 29. I knew he wasn't like super old, but I think there's something about like the Dagestanis that maybe it's like being or maybe it's just the cold weather Russian type people in general, being out there in the cold weather and the beards that they rock. It always just makes them look a little bit older, a little bit more weathered. So I don't know. That was just something I thought was kind of funny.
And here's your other thing with Magomed Ankalaev too. Looking at his level of competition, it's like the exact opposite of AJ Fletcher. I mean, he goes from Dalcha Lungiambula 10-1, knocking him out with a front kick, to Jan Kutalaba 15-4, knocks him out. TKO, came back just in case you didn't remember the first time. Jan Kutalaba, eat it again. KO TKO a second time. Followed that, Nikita Krylov 27-7 has a unanimous decision over him, and then a unanimous decision over Volkan Ozdemir. I mean, this is a guy who's running through guys who, even those last 2, they have V's and a lot of consonants in their name. That means that they're really accomplished ground guys, and he's running through them just the same. So I think it's only a matter of time before Thiago Santos gets finished on the ground this weekend.
That's funny. I love it. A lot of consonants in the name. Yeah, I definitely think Magomed Ankalaev is, now that you mentioned, the level of competition especially, but, I like your point about him getting the finish. And I think that's how it's going to go down now that you mentioned that. He's probably going to be a guy that we see towards the top of the division for quite some time. So I really like that pick. Magomed Ankalaev by TKO potentially. That's what I'm feeling. Some ground and pound.
One interesting thing to look for here is obviously he is a Russian fighter, so I'm interested to see with everything as it's progressing with Ukraine, how if they continue to keep Russian fighters on the cards, or if that gets pulled, or if the location of where these fights are going to be has any impact over who's allowed to or not allowed to fight. So I'm not saying that's going to have any impact for this fight, but just something to keep an eye on for the people at home as we move forward. And speaking of move forward, let's move forward with our picks, our pick rundown. So for me, prelim lock is Matthew Semmelsberger over AJ Fletcher. And then running through the main card, I'm going Alex Pereira over Bruno Silva. I'm going Drew Dober over Terence McKinney, although I don't feel confident about that one. I mean, I don't know if there's a limit to what Terence McKinney can do. This is a guy who's literally been pronounced dead at, I think, 2 different occasions, and now finds himself fighting to be in the top of the 155 division. I like Khalil Rountree over Karl Roberson. I like Siddique Yusuff over Alex Bruce Leroy Caceres. I like Yadong over Marlon Moraes, but I wouldn't be too shocked if Marlon Moraes wins. Keep an eye on the line. If it hits over 225 or 230, make sure you bet on him. And then Magomed Ankalaev by finish. I'm not sure what the rounds are, but I like for some reason, the second round making me think that, is when Magomed's going to get it done in the first or second.
I like that. I can't wait to clip that when you get that absolutely correct. In the second round, finished by Magomed Ankalaev. So my picks in this one, I've got Miranda Maverick, and I'm taking her by decision. I know it right now. It's going to end 30-27. I've got Alex Pereira. He's going to win by knockout over Bruno Silva. I've got Terence McKinney in that one. You already mentioned it. Tough fight to pick, but I'm going with Terence McKinney there. Got Khalil Rountree over Karl Roberson. I've got Siddique Yusuff by decision over Alex Caceres. I've got Yadong by knockout over Marlon Moraes. But like you said, sprinkle a little bit on Marlon. And I've got Magomed Ankalaev by KO TKO. So that wraps up the episode for us. All you people at home, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Make sure that you like this video, please, and comment down below what you think of this card, what you think of our picks, who you have going in. If there's anything that you absolutely love from us, or if you disagree, let us know down below. Also, real quick, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Pickin winners. There's no G in the Pickin. And you're checking out our website, pickinwinners.org. Tom's got a lot of great work out there on the internet. I'll let him plug that if he chooses to do so now. But thanks, guys.
Yeah, make sure you're just following. All of our information is below in the comments and in the description. So just give that a good look. Follow us everywhere you need, or everywhere we're at in terms of socials. We're trying to grow this bad boy, so help us out. Thanks for watching. Have a good night, guys.